Welcome to In the Center of Her Power podcast, where you can get divine feminine soul food. The divine feminine is re-establishing itself in the world, and you need tips and tools to make it your own. Hello, everyone. This is Sanaa Green. Thank you so much for joining me for another edition of Center Her Power podcast. On this podcast, we are exploring how you can connect to the divine feminine. I particularly connect through nature, sound, and dance. So today we have a very knowledgeable guest who I think connects through the divine feminine in a couple different ways. I know one way she connects is through nature, through herbalism. I'm here with Lottie Spady. Lottie, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Sanaa.
Lottie is my sister friend, and I call Lottie when all hell is breaking loose in my life. and she's like, okay, now this is what we need to do. Okay, here's this number. Blah, blah, blah. So thank you for saving me, Lottie. I appreciate
pleasure.
you. And Lottie and I also work together, and we have belly danced together, and we have given an offering to Grandmother Tree on the spring solstice together. Hey, you want to do that again this
I
year?
definitely do. That was so awesome. That was so
Yeah.
awesome.
Wasn't that fun? It was so
Yes.
pretty. It came out so pretty. If you all have to go on Instagram so you can see. Oh, excuse me. Sorry about the noise, you all. I had to move my chair back a little bit, but you have to go on Instagram so you can see our photos. So I'm really excited to talk to Lottie today. She appeared on the podcast last year when I was just getting started, and I said, Lottie, I need to do a new show. Lottie, can you help me? Can you be a guest? Even though this is not your expertise, can you just have a conversation with me about whatever, whatever, whatever? And she said she agreed. Thank you, Lottie. So today we're going to talk about her expertise. We're going to talk about tarot cards and herbalism. Before we get into that, I would like to talk about Lottie's company, which is Earthseed Detroit. Lottie, can you tell us about Earthseed Detroit and how it got started? I mean, when I think of Earthseed, I think of Octavia Butler's books, The Parable of the Talents and The Parable of the Sower. Can you walk
hmm
us through how you came to this title and what Earthseed Detroit actually means?
Okay, and you're right. Earthsea Detroit was named after Parable of the Sower. I read that book about 15 years ago when I was working for a nonprofit. I was running a teen center, and we were really working around deconstructing media narratives, and how to empower young people in the community. And a mentor friend of mine gave me the book Parable of the Sower, and I was like, this is it. I was like, is this is a blueprint for what I would want to do with these young people. At this point, I didn't know anything about environmental justice. I didn't know anything about food justice. I didn't know anything about herbalism. I just was touched deeply to the center of my being by this book. And I just wanted to model my life after Earthseed Detroit. I mean, after Earthseed, after the parable of the sower. And I
So walk
now,
us through what happened in Parable of the Sower and what Earthseed actually is.
so it's the Octavia E. Butler book around the a time in which there's like a fall of civilization. The government is corrupt, and there are just society as we know it is basically falling apart, and a lot of mayhem is taking place in these gated communities. So the choice is either to sort of stay and basically die fighting, or a few people decided to strike out on their own. One of whom, Lauren Olamina, who had been writing this journal all along, sort of interrogating her own ideas about religion and spirituality and God. And at the same time, her father, who was a preacher, had been low key teaching her, like, you need to be ready. You need to be ready. So she had like a backpack with some seeds, some maps, a book on Native American plants. And she sort of crewed up with a few people that were like, look, we either gonna stay or we gonna go. And they were like, well, let's go. So they
Yeah,
left.
so she actually met them on the road
Some
while
of
she
them,
was
mm-hmm,
leaving, right?
mm-hmm. She had, I think, one, anyway, it's not important. I mean, it is, but she had one or two people, and then she met a few more and a few more. Yep. And they ended up in a place that they decided would be called the Earthseed Compound. And so it's really a way of life, a spiritual, land-based way of life. It's not a religion. It's more so a way of life. And so I was just really taken by it. I now literally believe, you know how they have that exercise, like, what would you write? What would your future self write to your, former self? I really feel like my future self that is here right now, like, dropped that on Lottie of 15 years ago. Like, you're gonna need this. Just read this book. Just take this in, because you're gonna need this. And it wasn't until fast forward to working with an environmental justice organization, that's when I started the blog, Earthseed Detroit. And it was just me trying to learn what environmental justice was, because I didn't understand. I didn't understand what was meant by environmental justice. I was like, oh, you mean like the rainforest and like polar bears? It's like, yeah,
Yeah,
that's,
the polar bears in the
you
rainforest.
mean that when the polar bears are like in the rainforest, is that environmental justice? I just didn't
No,
know.
right, right. So polar bears do not live in the rainforest. Just a caveat. Just so we can say for sure.
So we can say for sure. So I started the blog Earthseed Detroit just to chronicle it was like, that's why it's called like the evolution of an urban farm girl. Because I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing here. All these concepts, around land use and water affordability and particulate matter, you know what I mean? Like pollution in the air and who's most affected. But really, those were big concepts that I understood how to, like, be an activist for, how to be on big stages and talk about, and how to, like, work with the public. But I was like, how am I really embodying this in my own life? And what does that really look like? Because it's easy to tell somebody to be like, you should be doing this. You should go to Kaleville. You should not eat that. You should stop doing that. But how do you really do it? And it was hard for me, like in my own house. I'm like, oh, I'm breaking the rules here. So it was like my way of being accountable, And I had no idea it was gonna grow into what it is now, which is like the entirety of my whole entrepreneurial and social justice and lifestyle, work.
Wow. So I know you were contemplating Earthseed and you were working as a leader in the nonprofit arena, and then you had a shift. What was the pivotal moment that had you decide that I'm going to set all this other stuff down, all the administrative things and nonprofit, and I'm going to focus just on becoming an herbalist? What
Hmm.
happened in your mindset to feel like that was what you should do?
Yeah, so it's funny how uh how people say you're rock bottom, like people have to hit rock bottom sometimes. I felt like a lot of things converged. Um, so that would have been about, I guess, 10 years ago now, um, where I had a lot of personal issues going on with my family. My parents were ill, and the job they were basically preparing for their transitions, and the job I was working in, a nonprofit, um, fell fell out of funding and had to do a mass layoff very quickly. And I was doing my own form of toxic like relationships. I just a lot, and it was like the rug sort of got pulled out from under me. Like everything that I might have been sort of used to doing or counting on doing went away in one way or another. And I was really left at loose ends. And I said, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Like I put all my eggs in this basket. Like I just don't know what to do. And it was interesting because I went to an herbalism class taught by a community member. And I was like, this is fun. Like, this is fun. We're making shea butter, whipped shea butter. And we were making stuff. And I was like, oh my God, this is so fun. I wish I could just go off and just, how you want to get away? Like, get away. And I was like, I would want to get away. And then a class came up taught by Jim McDonald, who is a good friend and herbalist extraordinaire. He was teaching a class, and I was just like, I'm going to this class. It was a long, an intensive class, like 1 month, 1 weekend a month for 8 months, and it was really expensive. I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this, but I'm gonna do it. And it's just funny how I think the universe conspired in my favor. You know what I mean? Like people would be like, "What is this thing you're trying to do? Here, let me give you a little donation toward whatever it is." And even my son was like, "Hey, I got my tax refund. Here's some money." I was like, "Oh, what?" That's when I knew the universe.
When your son gives you money, there's something has changed in the universe.
Something has shifted in the universe when the children start giving back. And just really one thing after another. It's a pretty extraordinary story that I have to remind myself of sometimes just to remember how this does feel like destiny. And once I went to the class, I was just like, I'm gonna do this. Like this is amazing. I was like, what? Because my mind, like being a Gemini, I love like just a good juicy thing to hook my brain into. And I was like, this is what I need. Like either to take my mind off of things. It's also a very healing journey. It was also sort of pushing my own comfort levels, you know what I mean? Because I was like, look, let me tell you something. My first class, his house is on a hill, like this big hill. And Lottie was still smoking cigarettes then. Lottie was still not being very kind to my body in a lot of ways with what I ate and the way I and the what I was doing. And I remember going to that first class and having to walk up that driveway, and I was huffing and puffing so much that I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And we were going to be outside for the second day of the class in all these different parks, hiking. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And that was a sad moment. Like you don't realize how you may the current situation, like how you are until you're able to measure it against something. You know what I mean? And I hadn't been running around outside with all this environmental work I was doing. I wasn't spending a lot of time out in my environment. So that really was an eye opener. But I stuck it out and I fell in love with it and it healed me. It really was personal. Like it really was a healing journey for myself. Like I didn't even want to be a herbal practitioner. I didn't have any intent on teaching this and selling product. It was just my thing, right? Until, universe said otherwise, but yeah.
Well, we're going to take a break here, but I want to come back and I would like to hear the rest of the story, such as how you ended up living in the house where you are now through this herbalism situation. You're in a whole new house.
Oh yeah.
And definitely want to hear about the Octavia E. Butler tarot card. But we're
Okay.
going to stop it here and we're going to go and do our Instagram live. and then we'll come back and we will get the rest of the story. We're back with Lottie Spady of Earthseed Detroit. She is an herbalist, and when we took our break, Lottie was telling us about Earthseed Detroit and how she had gone through a challenging situation and then decided that she was going to focus on herbalism. She said it was really fun. So once you took the one class with Jim McDonald, Lottie, then what happened? How did you get from that one class just for fun to teaching classes for 8 years and selling herbs and being a full-fledged herbalist with mason jars all over? Just in case someone had a question about what it is you do. I know that's a personal. That's
a few mason jars might be here and there.
Okay, tell me honestly. Could you estimate how many mason jars you think you actually have in the house? Just a broad estimate.
Wow. Oh, I'm sure it is in the hundreds, upper hundreds. I'll just put it like that.
That's good. And all of them have some really tasty tidbits, herbs in them. So
my goodness. Yes.
I took my cue from you, and so that mullein that I cut from the yard, I did, cut it into pieces, and I have it in a mason jar in my little apothecary. So it's still ready to be made for medicine. How long can I keep it in that jar?
Well, as long as it was it really dried, crispy?
Yeah,
dry?
It was crispy dry because it sat out for a long time. A long time.
Okay. And if as long as it's in an airtight situation, it should be fine for a few years. It's hard to tell with mullein in particular because it's not particularly aromatic. Like if it still has its potency, a lot of way you can tell is it still aromatic, and how does it taste like when you make a tea. But mullein happens to be very mild and it's not very aromatic. But as long as it was dried well and kept in an airtight situation, I would still think a couple of years it's still going to be good. Okay.
So that's how you end up with hundreds of mason jars, because you have herbs that you may have, harvested, and then you're saving them to utilize in medicine, right?
Yeah, there are all these different. See, that's the thing about living. So now I live someplace where there's a lot of land, and every season, I act all brand new every time I see a dandelion, as if I've never seen one before. And it's like, oh, it's time to harvest dandelion. Like, it doesn't matter that I have 2 jars of dandelion tincture already and dried dandelion already and dandelion vinegar. Like, it doesn't matter. Because I keep a nice rotation of medicine going. So like right now, I just finished doing an inventory of my actual tinctures, and I was impressed that I had over 75 different herbal tinctures, and about 2/3 of those were grown on my property and harvested by my hand. So they're Michigan grown, organic, but now that was from last year. And so I'll probably do a nice little tincture sale and move that product so that I can make more.
That's the motivation. Yes. Just got to sell it on, not selling it necessarily to make money, but just so you can make more.
So
have room to make more medicine.
That's just so fun. I mean, that's the part that feels like magic. You know what I mean? Like, thinking of formulations, and I do get excited, like, ooh, I know what I'm gonna do. Like, I made a dandelion flower infused oil, which I had never made before. And I made it last year, didn't think anything of it. A friend of mine called me and wanted something for her. She was having TMJ, like locked jaw pain in her mouth. So she wanted something for muscle tension. And she wanted kava kava, which is a really well, it's a relaxant for muscles and nerves, and I didn't have that. And I told her I had dandelion flower and goldenrod flower, which are both good for muscle tension. And I opened that dandelion flower oil, and it smelled like sunshine. It smelled amazing. I was like, oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to combine dandelion flower and goldenrod flower. And doesn't that just sound like a golden muscle relaxing blend for you? I mean, and I gave her a nice bottle of it and she said it was amazing. So I just get excited by formulations and the infinite possibilities, you know?
Yes. Oh, that is so wonderful. So tell me, before we go into the tarot cards, tell me where the activist Lottie is now. So you worked as an activist. So you worked as an activist where you were actually speaking out on behalf of environmental justice and food justice and justice. And
justice.
justice. And where does the justice in Lottie reside now?
So that is a really good question because I, like you said, was a frontline activist for many, many years. And I truthfully experienced a level of burnout that, I didn't even want to do activist work anymore, to be quite honest. I didn't want to be, it was too heartbreaking. It was all the tutus. It was just too much. And I didn't think I would go back to activist work. I wanted to just, hide in the forest somewhere. But so I realized, like, one of my herbal teacher, Jim McDonald, and some other herbalists that I really appreciate for their desire to understand access issues around herbalism. They were like, why are my classes so white? How come people won't, like, how do I get more people of color to come to our conferences or fairs or this kind of thing? And we just had some really open conversations about the limitations that are imposed upon communities of color with the relation to conferences, the costs of conferences, the costs of quote unquote higher education, the fear of going into a wilderness place with, like, you're the only person of color there. Like, we had some really good open conversations about the challenges. And then another important mentor to me, Gwen Winston, was one of the ones when I started this journey who said, yes, you go do what you have to do. Go get this education and this information and bring it back to community because we need this. And at the time when she said it, I was kind of like, okay, yeah, whatever. But I mean, I was just like, I need this. I couldn't even think beyond myself, really. But as I began to heal, I realized that the healing aspect was what was missing from the work I had been doing before. Like, no one encouraged me to take a day off. No one encouraged me to sit down and be still. And it's okay to not be on blast 24/7, 365. And that is not a measure of the worth or the kind of activist you are. You know what I mean? Like, no, that there's a very strong narrative around work. And I get it. Don't get me wrong. I understand it. But I also know that you lose people that way. Physically lose them, literally lose them, metaphorically, all the things, right? That you can't keep up that pace. So
and you lose people's hearts. Like, their hearts can get your heart can get broken when you are working on the front lines, working to bring about change, and really working against systems like systemic oppression, where there are generations of people who have been invested in and are invested in the status, in maintaining the status quo.
Yes.
And the systems are invested in keeping the underclass, and keeping the Illuminati separate, and the Illuminati and the ones making all the decisions for what's going to happen in our lives. And so it's radical, I think, for activists to start to think of activism from a different mindset. Like, what does it look like? And maybe you can actually answer this. What does it look like to go into a community of need, or to address someone's need, when you are rested, full, your belly is full, your heart is full, your mind is full, your spirit is infused? What is it like now to even contemplate working to bring about change?
Yeah, I think it helped me understand, like, compassion fatigue is real. Like, I'm just going to be honest. Like I said, it was hard to drum up the kind of compassion that was needed to do work when I had so little reserves of my own. You know, my patience was thin. My bandwidth was thin. I was easily irritated, easily shut down, or shutting other people down, probably in my head. Like, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear, you know what I mean? Like, it to take that time, it helped me really connect more to a spiritual aspect of it, that yes, this is a tag team race, and I'm not going to see the finish line. I might, but I might not. But it gave me back the ability to do my part of it as best as I can, and to be okay with when I can't, or when I have to rest, and to encourage other folks to see themselves as more multifaceted than just what you bring to the activist table, or, you know, like, you're more than just that. You deserve rest. You deserve to be in nature, just like you deserve clean water, just like you deserve safe places for your family to grow and thrive and play, and just like you need educational spaces. You know, the privilege that's embedded in quote unquote just nature was something that I just really had to come to terms with, because, you know, even in herbalism classes, it was like, we talk about how to gather herbs ethically, and they're like, you know, and safely, and don't do it where there's auto exhaust. Don't do it where there's this. Don't do it where there's that. I'm like, well, how many people do you know in the hood that have access to, you know, 5-10 acres of land where they can just run around and pick flowers from, that haven't been impacted by auto exhaust, or, you know, or man-made trash? So anyway, it just made me, yeah.
Exactly. So we live in a situation, most of us live in a place where there's pollution.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, it saved my life, as it, you know, it helped me come back into myself in a physical healing kind of way, and developing a relationship with nature. And I realized that all things were in divine order, because as I was doing my healing work, there were other people that were feeling the same way. There were other organizations that started to pop up, like Black to the Land Coalition, and people, you know, Outdoor Afro has been around for a really long time. I just didn't know about Outdoor Afro.
Yeah, I don't think I think they started a chapter here maybe about 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 8.
They got on my radar, like, oh, Black people are trying to be outside, you know, this is a thing. Wow, this is great. And then herbalism became, for me, I was like, this could be really doable. You know, this is something that is relatively inexpensive, that taps into our history. Like, one thing about herbalism that really sticks with me is that our relationship to plants, like, predates the oppressive relationships we have with any other entity, like human, and or otherwise, like that. If we tap into that relationship, that's a relationship that is truly empowering, like truly one of benefit and benevolence. And you know what I mean? Like, it's just, I really felt that was so powerful of a way to like step over all of this mess that has been put on us, over us, through us, and to be able to tap back to that place, a relationship that wasn't in the wasn't tainted by that we really listened. The plants listened to our needs. We listened to the plants, and we're like, you're here for me, to help me. That really gave me a lot of encouragement. Like I said, I just had to lean more on my spirituality to get me through, in order to step back in.
And I think it's the way you put it about stepping over, like over the systems, over the pollution, and going back to connect directly, spiritually, to the earth. That's really the way we bring about lasting change. I was talking to a friend, and she was talking about the Illuminati, as I just mentioned. I was like, we don't even need to be bothered with the Illuminati. We can just go back, like cut through all of that, jump over all of the systems and things that are in our way, and connect spiritually to the earth, and that will transform us. Now, we still have to live in the world, but once you are transformed, then you can approach the world in a different way. Do you think that you are living in the center of your power now?
I do. I think I'm closer than I may not be in the center yet.
But you're in the inner ring.
I'm definitely in the inner rings, though. I'm definitely closer than I've ever been before. And yes, for sure. I mean, I think opening myself up to this new possibility, because, like I said, being an herbalist was not on my radar. It wasn't like on my to-do list, but the universe guided me, and being open to that is leading me straight into the center of my power. The more that I listen to that, the more I get closer to the center of my power. I believe that.
Yeah, and the center of our power is not a power over, or it's not, not the oppressive, I'm in control kind of power that exists in the patriarchy and in the colonialism. The real power is in being able to know yourself truly and to be connected to spirit in whichever way you do that, whether it's through herbalism or song or belly dance or whatever, fishing, whatever is your thing. To be able to be your fullest and brightest self is what it means to be in the center of your power. So that's just my little plug for what we're working on doing for the show. I really want to make sure that I'm communicating clearly about the purpose of the show, so that when people listen, they know what they can expect. So I would really love to now hear about the Octavia E. Butler tarot card deck. I know on the Instagram Live you talked about how it came together, and you said that the card deck is not ready yet. And what is the hashtag that people can follow to find out about this tarot card deck?
Yes, the hashtag is Octavia E. Butler Tarot. Hashtag Octavia E. Butler Tarot for all updates, and to get a glimpse at the whole team, the fabulous team that was behind the creation of this deck, and to see where we are in process when the Kickstarter or pre-order comes about in the next couple of months. So yeah, stay tuned through that hashtag.
Okay, but you have a few cards that you're going to share with us, and you're going to talk about the herb. Now, what I really want to know is, how do you get to know an herb?
That is a great question, because like we were talking about earlier, like sometimes we get caught up in like I have to know quantity, like all these herbs. I want to be able to know all these herbs. But there's a lot of power in just getting to know one herb really well. And I think the best way to get to know an herb is to experience it in all of its forms. And that would be seasonally, that would be artistically. So, picking something, most people pick something because of maybe a health issue they have. Or you could pick something, in the case of the tarot, you could pick something that corresponds to your astrological sign, or, just some way to narrow it down. And then make a commitment to look up pictures of that herb on the internet, learn its growing habitat. If it grows near you, observe it in all 4 seasons, or if you live someplace where there's less noticeable seasons, observe it throughout the year. Pick some, dry it, press it into your journal. You can try writing about it. I mean, yes, you could just Google it and read everything there is to know about it, but really meditate with it. See what it has to tell you. I have herbs that show up for me that are like, I don't know why they're calling me, but they start to show up in my dreams. And then there's all the ways to physically work with it. Can it be a tea? Can it be an oil? Can it be a vinegar? Can it be a salve? Can it be used in a bath? Can it be used for house cleaning? Can you add it to your mop water? Can you use it as a hair rinse? So can you use it to season your food with? Just carrying it on your person. So it's just like making a relationship with a friend or an intimate partner, like you have to just peel back the layers and be open for what it reveals to you. You never would choose a partner based on just all the hearsay. Like, let me Google this person and see what their Wikipedia page says about them. And that's going to be how they are.
Yeah. He looks good on paper, so he must be good.
That's it. That's all there is to them.
Okay, so let's go over. Let's just do one of the cards from the deck, and then we're going to have to close our interview. But you already talked about 3 on Instagram, so let's just do one, and
that's
tell
cool.
us the deck, what the card is, and like you did before, and so we'll have.
Okay, I'm gonna talk about the Star, which is one of the major Arcana cards. And the Star in and of itself is a common card in most tarot decks. It's about
okay, so what is the Arcana? Tell us again what the Arcana is.
So the tarot deck is divided into your major Arcana and the minor Arcana. The first 22 cards are the majors, which start with the Fool, 0, the Fool, and go to the World, 21. And it's all about the maturation of the life's journey of the individual to becoming their fully realized self. So typically those cards represent major life events or nuances of a major life event. The Star is around collaboration, vision, direction, like you're part of a constellation, you're part of a group. How are you, like I said, collaboration. How are you navigating these relationships? And should you shine? Should you pull back? So, the Star is kind of all about that aspect. And one of the questions is like, what does it feel like when you shine? And the herb that I chose for Star is cloves. Now, I picked cloves because cloves are kind of like us wondering how much to shine or not, because cloves can be, if you use too much, they pack a punch. Cloves pack a punch. They can be delightfully aromatic and sweet and, just really nice. But if you use too much, it's easy to use too much. And it sometimes takes a minute to figure out the balance there. So I chose cloves, and You can add, so then using it in the actual world would be to add them to tea, a punch. You can make a pomander ball, which is real easy to take an orange, a fresh orange, and poke it full of whole cloves. And then you use that in your lingerie drawer or on your altar, or you could hang it somewhere and it freshens the space. It smells amazing.
Wow, I have to try that for the basement.
Yeah, it's a great activity. They're pretty. And so that's the star card. And, again, shining without self-consciousness, or figuring out the balance. Like how much sprinkle do you need to add to the punch to make it
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's one example of
That's
herbs
wonderful.
and tarot together.
Yeah, that is so wonderful. Now, the last question. How have you changed since you married the herbs with this Octavia E. Butler tarot card deck? What has changed about your relationship to herbs?
That's a good question that I kind of was thinking about earlier a little bit, as to how. So I always get nervous before I do any kind of talk or class, anything, and I start questioning, what do I really know? And that is because there's truly a vast amount of knowledge to know. And like when I started thinking about herbs as they related to astrology and tarot, and there's a whole nother segment, like how the zodiac was used with health, like how their parts of our bodies correspond to astrological signs as well. So all these dot to dot to dot to dot to dot. I feel like look, this is what I really think. I feel like I'm in that movie, what is it, A Beautiful Mind? Where he's got all them pins across all those pins and yarn and string going across the wall and making all these connections. And then you back up and go, is any of this real? I don't know. So I just am humbled by it. I have so much to still learn. I love to talk about what I've learned and share it, but I realize I have a lot to still learn. I'm looking forward to it. And I really feel supported by the universe in all the ways these systems and actual tangible things have been provided for us to navigate this space we're in. So I'm encouraged. I'm humbled. I'm overwhelmed, but I'm still curious.
Still curious. I love that. I love that. So if people want to learn more about herbalism or about what you do, how can folk work with you?
Well, they can. I have a website, Earthseed Detroit, www.earthseeddetroit.com, where I blog sometimes. And
I'll include that in the show notes.
Okay, thank you. My YouTube channel is a creative space where I do a lot of how-tos, plus just day-to-day life, trying to be sustainable, environmentally sensitive, which of course includes herbalism and sustainability and good food and all kinds of stuff. And then there's my Facebook page, everything by the same name, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Earthseed Detroit. And I'm pretty prolific on social media. So if you hit one of them things, you're in there. But I'd love it if you would subscribe to the channel.
Yes, subscribe because, okay, so we're trying to get Earthseed Detroit to 1,000 subscribers. How many more subscribers do we need, Lottie?
Oh my God, I only need 15.
Only 15.
Only
you could
15.
be one of the 15 subscribers to help Lottie Spady of Earthseed Detroit get to 1,000 subscribers.
And when I hit 1,000 subscribers, I am going to do a little sale in the store, in my Earthseed Detroit store. And yeah, we'll see. Let's see how we can grow this community. I'd love to have all of you as part of the community. So yeah.
Lottie Spady of Earthseed Detroit, herbalist, activist, teacher, tutor, mentor. What else? What else?
Talker.
And my good friend. Thank you so much, Lottie. Spady, Earthsea Detroit.
Thank you so much, Sanaa. Talk to you soon.
If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. Did I say it was free? It's totally free. You don't have to pay anything to get started. There are creation tools, and you can edit and trim the end. You can record. There's intro music that you can use. It has so many really cool features that I really needed as I was starting to podcast. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So go download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM and get started. Go ahead, download, get started. Let your voice be heard. Thank you so much for joining me for In the Center of Her Power podcast. I sincerely hope that you were fed with divine feminine soul food. Please like or subscribe or share the podcast. And until next time, shine.